The brass latch on my spring chronometer snapped shut beneath my thumb. Across the calibration hall, 6 Council capital ships hung beyond the armored glass, their twin jump drums turning so slowly that the painted timing mark seemed nailed to space. The property seal appeared on the central registry at the same moment. The second hand crossed 12. No one applauded. That would have been beneath the office of Custodian Caver Threx, who preferred decisions that looked inevitable after they were made. "Effective immediately," he said, standing beneath the blue Council standard. "All human technical personnel operating under Council Charter are reclassified as administered property of the Galactic Council. Existing service obligations remain in force. Refusal provisions are suspended." I remember the sound that followed better than the words. 6 soft chimes. One from each military jump console. Not approval tones. Invalidation tones. The launch gallery had been prepared for a ceremonial departure. Mirorwell Muster was a transit staging complex, not a battlefield, and the 6 capital ships outside were supposed to leave in pairs for exercises along the eastern frontier. Their crews had already completed reactor checks, navigation alignment, drum synchronization, and hull stress review. All that remained was the last certification chain. On my console, all 6 final boxes turned gray. Independent contradiction witness, invalid status. I looked at the line twice, then a third time. Beside me, Senior Scheduler Malik Tavan muttered, "Registry lag." Custodian Threx did not turn, correct it. "I cannot," I said. His eyes moved toward me. Valith eyes have clear inner lids, and mine had closed without my permission. It was a childhood reflex, something my species did when light changed too quickly. The light had not changed. The category had. Threx came down from the platform. I had examined resonance systems for 23 years. I had certified failures everyone else dismissed and approved jumps that frightened younger officers. I knew the smell of overheated ceramic seals, the pitch of cooling pumps, the small delay between drum synchronization and actual field agreement. I did not panic over gray boxes. But the 6 boxes remained gray. "Examiner Dane," Threx said, "the humans were part of the process before the decree." "Yes, Custodian. And they remain part of the process after it. They remain present." That is what I said. "No." The correction left my mouth before I could stop it. He stared. Behind him, the human contradiction specialist, Dr. Selene Arkwright, stood at a narrow console physically separated from military command. Her station had always annoyed visiting officers. It was close enough to see, but its data channel passed through a one-way witness bus. Command could send her a proposed jump solution. Command could read her rejection. Command could not edit her conclusion or overwrite her record. Until that morning, I had treated the arrangement as human theater. Humans liked visible boundaries. They put red lines on floors around dangerous machinery. They printed expiration dates on equipment that could easily be used longer. They labeled emergency handles with verbs instead of symbols. They wrote rules for the moment when everyone was tired, angry, hurried, or convinced the rule no longer mattered. Useful habits sometimes, irritating ones often. Threx followed my gaze to Arkwright. "Doctor," he said, "resubmit your certifications." She did not touch her panel. "I cannot certify those jumps." "You certified them yesterday." "Yesterday, I was an independent contractor. Today you are a council asset with the same technical knowledge." "Yes." "Then certify them." "No." The room tightened. Not dramatically, no guard stepped forward, no alarm sounded. Just boots settling harder against magnetized deck plates, the whisper of cooling lines overhead, the small metallic click of my chronometer counting seconds no one wanted. Threx lifted one hand. You misunderstand your position. Arkwright's expression did not change. I understand it exactly. He spoke slowly, as if explaining a regulation to a difficult clerk. The Council now owns the service capacity previously controlled by human political authorities. You are not being asked to invent a new solution. You are being instructed to perform the function you already perform. I am being instructed to call myself independent from the authority that owns me. You are technically independent. No, I am technically competent. That is different. The words irritated me because I thought they were legal games. I turned back to the 6 ships and searched for another cause. Mirorwell's capital hulls used annular jump drums, paired rings built around a split central spine. The system was old, reliable, and brutally conservative. Each jump solution was generated by fleet navigation, checked by onboard systems, passed through station resonance review, and then sent to a contradiction witness. The witness did not make the jump possible. The witness tried to prove the jump unsafe. That distinction had always seemed unnecessarily adversarial to me. A good engineer was supposed to make systems work. Humans had imported an entire profession built around asking how systems could fail. Still, the Council had adopted it after several successful trials. More important, admirals trusted it. My screen listed the rule in plain text. Armed hull jump certification requires an independent contradiction witness, not subordinate to the authority requesting clearance. I had read that sentence hundreds of times. I had never wondered what would happen if a government decided to own the witness. Threx noticed it at the same time. His voice hardened. That wording concerns command hierarchy. I opened the statute. It concerns dependency. Then interpret dependency appropriately. I am an examiner, not a legislator. You are a council officer. I am a council examiner. His jaw shifted. That was the first crack, though I did not understand it then. The problem was not that a human refused an order. Threx knew how to handle refusal. The problem was that my own authority depended on her right to refuse. At Launch Station 4, a coolant valve cycled. Condensation trembled beneath the pipe and dropped onto the deck with a tiny silver splash. Another minute passed. The 6 ships did not move. The ceremonial departure clock reached 0. Nothing happened. Threx's first response was sensible. He ordered a technical review. That matters because people who later described the Mirorwell suspension often turned him into a fool. He was not. A fool would have forced the ships through on pride. Threx did what competent authorities do when a procedure produces an absurd result. He assumed the procedure had been misapplied. For 43 minutes, we checked everything. Registry synchronization, contract status, witness credentials, fleet authority codes, station timing, drum harmonics, legal definitions, software revisions. Nothing was broken. The property decree had propagated exactly as written. Every human attached to a council military jump program had become subordinate to the council. The certification architecture recognized that status and rejected every human contradiction witness as non-independent. Threx paced once around the launch gallery, then stopped beside my station. How many departures are affected? At Mirorwell, 6 immediate. Beyond Mirorwell. I queried the military network. The answer arrived in layers. First 7 delayed clearances. Then 19. Then 41. Not ships trapped between stars. Not civilian transports stranded, not gates collapsing, simply military vessels whose next jump required fresh certification and no longer possessed a valid contradiction witness. The gray spread because doctrine was consistent. Threx watched the count climb. Suspend the human witness requirement. It is not a human requirement. You know what I mean. It is Council Fleet Safety Rule 9. He looked toward Arkwright, who wrote it. Council Fleet Safety adopted the language. The contradiction model was human. Then replace the humans. That too was sensible. I agreed. Arkwright did not object. In fact, she surprised me by saying, "You should." Threx turned to her. "You recommend your own replacement." "I recommend independent review." There was something almost insulting about how calmly she said it. Threx assigned 3 Valith resonance examiners, 2 Kelvori computational auditors, and an autonomous validator suite to reproduce the human function. He put me in charge because I had the longest certification record at Mirrorwell and because, as he reminded me, I was not human. We moved to Calibration Vault 3. The vault sat deeper inside the station, behind layered field shielding and a corridor where every locker latch buzzed when the test coils charged. Instead of a ship, the chamber held an unmanned calibration sleeve, a reinforced instrument package designed to perform a microscopic translation within containment. No crew. No weapons. No open jump corridor. A bad result would damage equipment, not people. Arkwright was allowed to observe from behind the glass. Threx made a point of placing 2 security officers near her station. She ignored them. I set my chronometer beside the resonance display. My grandfather had given it to me when I qualified as a junior examiner. It was mechanical, which humans found charming and most Valith found embarrassing. The case had 6 tiny screws and a spring wheel that gained almost a second every 9 days. I kept it because electronic clocks agreed too easily. The irony did not occur to me yet. Our first task was to understand what humans actually did during contradiction review. The official manual was clear but thin. Receive proposed solution. Reconstruct independently. Search specifically for disconfirming evidence. Reject if unresolved divergence exceeds tolerance. The phrase "search specifically for disconfirming evidence" annoyed the Kelvori auditors. Auditor Cental clicked his mandibles. That is not a method. Arkwright spoke through the glass. It is the beginning of one. Threx looked at me. Do not let her direct the test. I asked a question. You did not. I was about to. That earned the faintest movement at the corner of Arkwright's mouth. I disliked her for it. What do you do, I asked, that the standard validator does not? She folded her arms. The validator asks whether the proposed model is internally consistent. Yes. I ask what observation would make me stop believing it. Cental made a dry scraping sound. Semantic distinction. No, she said, operational distinction. Explain. If 10 sensors agree, your validator increases confidence. I ask whether the 10 sensors share the same blind spot. That is elementary correlated error analysis. Then you will have no trouble replacing me. Threx ended the exchange with a gesture. We chose a previously certified calibration solution from the archive, removed all human annotations, and gave the raw sensor data to the replacement team. The first run was clean. So was the second. On the third, the autonomous validator produced 99.98% confidence. The Kelvori auditors approved. My Valith team approved. I approved. Threx stood behind us with his hands clasped behind his back. Send the same solution to Dr. Arkwright. Her station received the packet. She took longer than I expected. Not dramatically longer, 11 minutes. During the first 4, she said nothing. During the 5th, she asked for the raw timestamp series rather than the normalized timing layer. During the 7th, she requested thermal drift from the outer drum simulator. During the 9th, she leaned closer to the display. My chronometer ticked. 10 seconds. 20. 30. At 11 minutes and 12 seconds, her console returned one line. Contradiction found. Do not certify. Threx exhaled through his nose. Basis. Arkwright sent a narrow graph. At first I saw nothing. Then I enlarged it. The pulse intervals were not wrong in the usual sense. Each remained inside tolerance. But every 7th cluster arrived fractionally later than the model predicted, and the delay did not repeat at a fixed amplitude. It accumulated, vanished inside normalization, then returned. Cental dismissed it immediately. Below operational threshold. Arkwright answered for one drum. There are two. Yes. The paired system cancels common drift. If the drift is common. Silence. I looked again. The two drums did not share the same thermal curve. The difference was tiny. Threx said, Examiner. I need to rerun. He did not like the answer, but he allowed it. I stripped away the normalized timing layer. The pattern remained. I adjusted for thermal offset. The pattern sharpened. My inner lids closed again. Not because the result was catastrophic. Because I finally understood what the humans had been looking for. We had asked whether the solution was good. They had asked where it could be lying. The distinction was not philosophical anymore. It was sitting on my screen as a repeating absence between two ticks. Threx still had alternatives. He ordered us to test the discrepancy instead of arguing about it. That decision moved the entire matter out of law and into physics. The calibration sleeve was reset. Cooling lines were stabilized. We loaded the disputed solution exactly as the replacement team had approved it, but we added a containment limit far tighter than any operational jump. The sleeve would translate only far enough for instruments to measure whether the paired drums separated from their predicted phase relationship. No one spoke during the final countdown. I watched my chronometer. 5, 4, 3. The second hand passed a scratch near the edge of the dial. 2, 1. The sleeve vanished. It reappeared almost where it had been. Almost. The displacement was smaller than the width of my hand, safely inside the containment chamber, but the instrument screamed with the meaning of it. The paired drums had not canceled the drift. They had reinforced it for less than a heartbeat, creating exactly the directional error Arkwright's contradiction report predicted. A real warship would not have translated the width of my hand. Scale the same unresolved phase relationship to a military jump, and the uncertainty grew beyond certification tolerance. Not guaranteed destruction. That was important. The result did not prove that every ship would fail. It proved something more troublesome for a safety examiner. We could not honestly state where the ship would emerge within the required envelope. Cental stopped clicking his mandibles. Threx looked through the glass at Arkwright. You seeded the archive sample. No. You knew which sample would fail. Yes. How? I rejected it 14 months ago. I opened the archive history. She had. The solution had been corrected before use and retained as a training case. Someone in my team had selected it because the metadata called it resolved, and because all human annotations had been removed for the blind test. Threx's face changed. Not fear. Recalculation. You designed this outcome. Arkwright shook her head. Your examiner chose the sample. Your team approved it. Your containment system ran it. You knew what we would find. I knew what I found 14 months ago. Then why did you let us waste an hour? Her answer came without heat. Because if I told you I was necessary, you could call that self-interest. Now you have your own result. That was when my belief truly broke. Until then, I had thought the dispute concerned human pride, council arrogance, or an unfortunate wording problem. Those were manageable things. Rewrite a statute, replace a contractor, rename a category. The test proved the dependency was functional. But even that did not mean humans were irreplaceable. I said so. Arkwright nodded. Good. Threx looked sharply at me. I continued. The method can be taught. Yes, Arkwright said. Centaur finally spoke, then the suspension can end. No, I said. The word surprised me. I picked up my chronometer. The method can be taught, the relationship cannot be faked. Threx's attention fixed on me. I turned the instrument over in my palm. The witness must be independent from the authority requesting the jump. If we train new examiners but subordinate them to the same command, we preserve the same problem. That was always true, Threx said. Yes. Then use alien civilian examiners. We can. Use autonomous systems. As supporting tools. Use another council branch. If fleet safety accepts the separation. His shoulders eased a fraction. There it was, a path out. Not immediate but real. Humans had not built an impossible monopoly. The council could train others. It could create independent offices. It could redesign certification. The military would not be helpless forever. Threx seized on that. Begin emergency qualification. I hesitated. For future cycles, yes. For today, no. His relief vanished. Why? Because qualification itself requires demonstrated independence, not merely different species. You are independent. I am employed by Fleet Resonance Examination. You have contradicted me repeatedly. Personally, yes. Institutionally, I still report through the chain requesting these clearances. You certified jumps yesterday. I certified resonance conditions. I was not the contradiction witness. Threx looked toward the 6 capital ships beyond the distant armored glass. We could see them only through relay imagery from the vault now, but they remained where they had been, drums idle. The wider network report had stopped climbing, because fleet safety had frozen new military departures pending review. No ships were lost. No civilians were affected. Nothing dramatic happened. That made the pressure worse. A destroyed ship gives an institution something obvious to fight. A gray clearance box gives it time to understand what it did to itself. Threx returned us to the launch gallery. By then, the ceremonial banners had been removed. Shift workers had replaced officials. A maintenance technician crawled beneath Console 9, tightening a vibrating locker hinge, while admirals appeared on secure channels demanding timelines. I noticed that ordinary work continued around the crisis. Cooling pipes still sweated. Boot magnets still clicked. My chronometer still gained its small, stubborn fraction of a second. Arkwright stood at her isolated station without touching the controls. Threx convened fleet safety, legal authority, and navigation command. The debate lasted nearly 2 hours. Some officials wanted the property decree interpreted narrowly, applying ownership only to human labor contracts but not professional judgment. Legal authority rejected that. Property could not possess protected institutional independence from its owner. Others proposed designating Arkwright an autonomous council instrument. She laughed once. Not mockingly. Just once. That proposal died quickly. A fleet admiral suggested moving human witnesses under civilian administration. I asked the obvious question. Is civilian administration still the Galactic Council? Yes. Then who owns Dr. Arkwright? The channel went quiet. Threx's hand closed around the edge of the table. What exactly do the humans demand? Everyone looked at Arkwright. She answered nothing. That created more confusion than a list of demands would have. Threx leaned toward her. Your military certifications have stopped. They were invalidated. You could restore them by cooperation. I cannot restore independence by obeying the owner whose ownership removed it. What do you want in exchange? I am not selling you a switch. Then state the political condition. I do not have one. The admiral on screen snapped. Humanity has council military mobility in suspension and claims it wants nothing. Arkwright looked at him. You suspended yourselves when you changed our legal status. You expect us to believe humanity did not anticipate this. I expect you to check the logs. We did. No human code had entered a council jump core. No human command had been sent to a military gate. No route tables had changed. No beacons had moved. No access keys had been revoked. The only new instruction in the entire system was the Council's own property classification. The military had not lost jump access because humanity seized a road. It had lost certified access because the Council had declared one of its safety witnesses incapable of independence. That distinction became the center of the room. And once it was visible, it refused to disappear. The strongest challenge came from Threx himself. He found an emergency waiver. I learned later that he spent 31 minutes searching for it while everyone else argued over jurisdiction. The clause was old, written after a border crisis in which a carrier group had needed to leave dock before a full civilian review board assembled. It allowed the custodian of military continuity to bypass contradiction certification during a declared strategic emergency. Threx was the custodian. He could sign. For the first time since the decree, the launch consoles offered a route around the gray boxes. 6 red waiver field appeared beneath the invalid certifications. Threx stood before them. The room changed. Until then, every obstacle could be blamed on language, process, or missing personnel. The waiver reduced the problem to a decision. He could restore military jump authority with his hand. He looked at me. Examiner Dane, are the 6 ship solutions otherwise within standard parameters? Yes. Are their primary navigation models valid? Yes. Did the replacement team identify any fault in the 6 active solutions? No. Did Dr. Arkwright? I checked. She had not certified them, so she had not completed contradiction review after the decree. No completed finding. Then the demonstrated calibration fault is not evidence that these 6 solutions are unsafe. Correct. A few officers relaxed. Threx continued. So the waiver is lawful, the active solutions are conventionally valid, and the only missing component is an independent contradiction witness, whose status was altered by a political decree. Yes. He placed his hand over the authorization field. This is what emergency authority exists for. I should have agreed. Instead, I heard my chronometer. Tick, tick, tick. Not perfectly. Never perfectly. That tiny mechanical imperfection was why I kept it. I looked at the fault latch schematic on my console. Something bothered me. The waiver could bypass the certification requirement in software, but the capital ships also carried physical contradiction latches inside their jump control circuits. I had always assumed those were human additions. I opened the installation history. They were not. The latches had been ordered by Council Fleet Command 9 years earlier after a classified review of near-miss data. Human engineers had recommended a warning architecture. Council admirals had strengthened it. The final design required the contradiction channel to be either satisfied or explicitly overridden at the ship itself. 2 decisions. Not 1. The station custodian could issue the waiver. Then each ship commander had to accept personal responsibility for bypassing a safety lock their own fleet had insisted be impossible to ignore. I sent the history to Threx. He read it. The red fields remained open. "What is your point?" he asked. "My point is that the humans did not trap us." "I know that." "No, I do not think we have understood it yet." His eyes narrowed. I turned my display so the room could see. 9 years ago, Fleet Command decided contradiction review mattered enough that political authority alone should not quietly erase it. The physical latch exists because admirals wanted the person taking the risk to know exactly what was being removed. The admiral on the secure channel said, "That is standard layered responsibility." "Yes." "Then use it." I looked at him. "Will you order 6 captains to override?" He opened his mouth. Stopped. The first ship commander appeared on a separate channel a moment later. Captain Rhea Vosrin of the Iron Tithe had already read the waiver notice. "Examiner," she said, "has contradiction review been completed on my solution?" "No, Captain." "Has the requirement been removed because new evidence shows it unnecessary?" "No." "Has a qualified replacement witness independently cleared my jump?" "No." "Then I decline override." Threx stared at her image. "You are refusing a lawful continuity order." "I am refusing a discretionary safety override. Those are not the same." The second captain declined. Then the third. The fourth asked for a completed independent review before deciding. The fifth said nothing for almost a minute, then declined. The sixth requested that the waiver remain available but unsigned. No mutiny. No human threat. No dramatic rebellion. Council officers followed the caution the council had trained into them. Threx slowly removed his hand from the authorization field. That was the moment humanity's advantage became complete. Not because humans controlled our ships. Because they did not need to. The system had learned from them long before the property decree, and our own officers had agreed with the lesson. Independent contradiction was not a human lock on council power. It was a council choice about what counted as trustworthy power. Threx could break the rule. He could not break it and still pretend nothing had changed. The legal session began before the launch gallery clocks reached the next shift. By then, I had stopped thinking of the crisis as a military suspension. It was a definition problem with 6 warships waiting outside to make the definition expensive. Threx called the Council Registry Authority. The property decree still glowed on the central display. Humanity acquired civic asset. He looked at Arkwright. "If this classification is removed, will you certify the ships?" She answered carefully. "I will perform fresh contradiction review as an independent specialist if humanity authorizes my contract, and if I remain free to reject any solution." "You will not guarantee approval." "No." One legal officer made an exasperated sound. Threx ignored it. "Examiner Dane, if Dr. Arkwright returns to independent status, does Rule 9 recognize her?" "Yes." "And if another qualified independent witness is trained later?" "Yes." "So this is not a permanent human monopoly?" "No." He turned toward the registry officer. "Strike the classification." The officer froze. "Custodian, that requires council legal review." "Begin it." The decree came from the council. So will its reversal. For the first time that day, Threx sounded tired. Not defeated. Tired. The review did not end in a dramatic vote. Lawyers opened the acquisition clause that had made the decree possible and discovered a problem larger than humanity. The clause treated sovereign sentient populations as transferable assets after specified findings of dependency. If ownership invalidated independent professional judgment, then any institution using such judgment could sabotage its own procedures by invoking the clause. Medical review. Accident investigation. Treaty inspection. Scientific verification. Military certification. The same contradiction spread outward without a shot being fired. The Council could either create endless exceptions or remove the category that caused them. Threx chose the cleaner answer. At 1840 station time, the property entry disappeared. At 1852, the acquisition clause was suspended pending permanent repeal. At 1911, humanity's legal status returned to sovereign contracting party. Only then did Arkwright sit at her console. She did not smile. She did not make us wait for effect. She opened the first ship file and began again from raw data. The 6 capital ships still did not move. That surprised several officers. Reclassification had restored the possibility of certification, not certification itself. Arkwright rejected the 3rd ship's initial solution for a thermal timing disagreement. Its navigation team recalculated. She requested additional sensor history from the 5th. She approved the 1st after 26 minutes. The 2nd followed. Then the 4th. The 3rd passed on its revised solution. The 5th required another check. The 6th was last. No one complained. The process that had seemed intolerable that morning now looked different because we finally understood what the waiting purchased. Near midnight, the last gray box turned white. Authorized. Outside the armored glass, the Iron Tide's twin jump drums accelerated. The timing marks blurred. Cooling lines shuddered overhead, and a drop of condensation struck the deck almost where the first one had fallen hours earlier. Captain Vossran's ship vanished cleanly. Not because humanity had given our military access back. That phrase appeared in later reports, and I rejected it every time. Access had never belonged to humanity. Trustworthy clearance had depended on a form of disagreement the Council tried to own. There is a difference. I remained long enough to watch the next review begin. A young Valith examiner occupied the chair beside mine, nervous enough to check her seals twice. Across from her sat a human witness I had never met and a Kelvori civilian analyst from outside Fleet Command. They received the same proposed solution on separate channels. No one asked them to agree. That was the change. The young examiner noticed a minor coolant discrepancy and flagged it. The Kelvori analyst dismissed it. The human requested a longer temperature history. For several minutes, the 3 records diverged without anyone trying to force them into one answer. Threx stood at the rear of the gallery and watched. Earlier that morning, disagreement had looked to him like wasted authority. Now he waited, while 3 people contradicted one another over a ship that could not depart until their questions were resolved. Eventually, the coolant discrepancy proved harmless. The human withdrew the objection. The Kelvori added a note explaining why the apparent pattern had been misleading. The Valith examiner signed last. The ship received clearance. Threx did not speak to me before leaving. He only stopped beside the empty registry pedestal, touched the 4 holes where the property seal had been fixed, and looked once toward the separate witness consoles. Then he walked out. There was no ceremony for that either. Only another file arriving, another proposed solution opening, and 3 independent people beginning by asking where it might be wrong. Outside, another jump drum began rotating, steady enough to trust only after someone had tried to doubt it. Before I left the gallery, technicians removed the heavy property seal from the registry pedestal. It had been mounted in a square recess with 4 dark fasteners. The recess looked strangely empty. I set my spring chronometer inside it while I signed the final resonance report. Its brass case fit imperfectly. Of course it did. Across the hall, 6 new certification cycles began for the next departures. Human and non-human witnesses worked on separate channels. None belonged to the officers asking them for approval. The Council would later repeal the acquisition clause completely. Fleet safety would rewrite Rule 9 so no independent technical witness could be owned, compelled, or subordinated to the command being audited. Those were important changes. But the image I remember is smaller. A square of bare metal where an ownership seal had been. My old chronometer resting inside it. And the second hand moving forward with nobody in the room possessing the authority to order it to agree.